Welcome to Discussions of Music, Healing, and Consciousness with your hosts Chris Noble and Bill Peratzman. On this podcast, Chris and I offer a spontaneous, ongoing conversation about how music is intertwined with healing and consciousness. We hope this podcast will cultivate your knowledge and curiosity, inspire your own study and practice of the musical and healing arts, and that your contribution to advancing world consciousness will be satisfying for you and transformative to those around you. Let's get started.
I had a writing session last night, and I'm starting to write and play and jam with my friends who are not, they're musical and they're very creative, but they didn't, go to school to study music. They didn't work in the industry like we have. And oh man, I'm finding like these jams are they're so fun. And the songs that we're creating are so magical. I feel like almost because they're not typical trained, indoctrinated musicians.
Yeah, I completely agree.
And they have, because my friends have done so much self-work and they've all really developed their self-development, their emotions, etc., and their level of, understanding ego. Because I find with a lot of artists and musicians too, ego, not even always as an aggressive ego, but just as like an insecure ego thing. Artists and musicians typically, and I think that's changing, but typically we're a little protective of our work, or if you have critical feedback, everyone's like, like we still talk about it, but you tiptoe around things. With my friends, like, because they haven't gone through, I guess, some of that like my buddy last night, I mean, he works, he's a landscaper during the day, right? So he's not like doing what we do normally. And, he played something for me last night, and I had a quick idea, and I played him back what I was thinking, but I messed up his melody and I messed up his chord progression a little bit. And normally I'd be like, well, can you just do it the way I wrote it, man, or something?
Right.
But instead he was just like, wow, I love what you did there. Let's go in that direction. And he just has no, like all my friends do, they don't have any attachment to the things that they're even creating. And they're just happy to share. If someone has feedback, they're like, yeah, or no, I was thinking more of this, but they don't have that, like, you know what I mean? That emotional attachment. A lot of musicians.
Yeah. Don't mess with my stuff.
Don't mess with my stuff. Don't take my stuff. Don't try to alter my stuff. All that. They don't have that prejudice or that trauma.
Yeah.
So it's refreshing. I got to say, I'm thoroughly enjoying just making music with my friends. We might end up recording though and releasing some of this stuff on Spotify. It's not
that'd be cool. Yeah,
I know. Yeah,
definitely do that.
People are musical. Like I've heard people play me songs they've written where, again, they're like a full-time accountant or something, and they just have their guitar and their voice for, after hours, just letting themselves express. And I'll hear some of their songs. I'm just like, that's literally as good as anything I've heard from a full-on professional musician. This is beautiful. Like, we're creative, man. We're creative beings.
I can't count the number of podcasts I've been on where somebody in the room has a guitar or sometimes a rack of guitars in their background. And these are people that I wouldn't be on a musical podcast with. For the most part, they're business podcasts, And there's a lot that I watch too. There's a guy who's a Rio. So he's a what do they call it? Radar intercept operator, something like that. F-14. Tomcats, right? So he rode the rear seat, did all this stuff. He has a great podcast, and he's got a bunch of guitars in his background, but he's talking about stuff like the war in the Middle East, interviewing pilots and, ex-Navy people about stuff that's happening. And so it's like the farthest thing away from music, but there's the guitars. It's really sweet, to know that there's a musical connection.
I mean, we're all musical beings. I've the same thing, Bill. I've seen podcasts where I'm just looking in their background and there's like a, electric guitar hanging on the wall.
Right?
Or piano in the background, something. And again, they don't do it professionally. They're not, pursuing it like you and me, or any, maybe for some of our listeners, but like, it's just there. Like, we're musical, right? A lot of people, I think about, or our guest last podcast, right? Greg brings up great points of like, think about just think about your life without music.
Right. Why not let a little of it in, you know? Yeah,
Exactly.
Greg Morgolioni was great. If you haven't heard his interview yet, as you're listening to this one, uh, backspace once
Yep. Yep.
and pick
One
up that
episode
podcast.
previous to what you're listening to right now, folks. It's a
And
great.
it's marvelous because I wouldn't say that Greg's like a working musician, but he's figured out to how to be a working musician, right? He's not a studio player. He's not none of the things that we would think of as normal for musicians who work are in his scene. However, he's a singer songwriter and he plays some pretty decent covers and he's getting paid for them.
Yeah, and he's found his
And
niche.
you know, more of that, please.
I love it because it's just showing how there's really no limits anymore for how we can bring in financial abundance as artists, as creatives, as
Yep.
people. Obviously, this goes beyond music, but just for this podcast, I'm blown away at all the different ways now that we can make lots of money as artists and as musicians, because we just got to get out of the old mindset of the starving
Oh,
artist.
yes.
And I'm saying that to myself as much as anyone right now. And that mindset it's so not even true. It's based off of actually like no facts anymore, because we have the world is our oyster now, and there's just literally an infinite amount of ways to make money on these things. Like, for example, just if as a musician, or let's just as any creative, but let's just say as a musician, I've been following I'll sometimes have a problem that I need to fix. I'll go on YouTube and I'll find a tutorial to, like, help me with something on Logic.
Yes, as one does.
As one does, always. Oh my God, it's the best. And I'll sometimes come across other musicians' YouTube channels, and they're just, sharing their knowledge. And I watch it, and I look at their subscribers, and some of these musicians who are not even doing full on music on their platform. It's like music with some video that is, informative, or sometimes just a vlog. Like, it's not just music. Yet these musicians have sometimes hundreds of thousands of followers and subscribers, which just means right there, like, as any business model goes, if you've got hundreds of thousands of people, that is a business, and you can monetize the crap out of that
Yeah.
and do quite well financially,
Yeah.
just that in of itself. So you don't even need to release music and make money on any of your music as a musician. You can, and you should, but also you could literally just make money off of ad revenue, subscriber memberships. Like on YouTube now, there's a membership function, just like
Yep.
on Patreon or anything else. You can literally click to subscribe for a membership, which is what I'm doing on my channel now. And it's, again, just these layers of simple ways to make money as creatives and as musicians. It's just it's almost like I want to really encourage our artists and musicians specifically to just throw out the rule book, and especially throw out the old industry model.
Oh, it's gone.
I gotta play the shows and then get discovered and then get signed to a label, and then they take care of me and manage me and then steal all my money.
It's not happening. Not anymore.
Thank God.
The thing that's opened the door so much is, I guess the best way to say it is when you check your ego outside, right? And I'm saying it that way because I recently watched a documentary about the Wrecking Crew, the LA studio musicians who were behind everybody's album from like 1964 or something until 1973. The same cats were playing all those albums. But that got me, I got there from the video about We Are the World, which probably also had a lot of those same, studio musicians playing along behind it. But over the door on the night that they recorded We Are the World, there was a sign that said, "Leave your ego outside." And that's been a real lesson for me because I'm producing an album right now, band I was part of, but we haven't got the perfect recordings we wanted. Particularly for the lead singer and band leader, we haven't got that, studio quality that we wanted. It's real raw, it's real authentic. And I was talking with the engineer about it the other day, and he said, "Bill, let's just go with it. Let's just embrace the fact that it isn't perfect and make that kind of the part of the atmosphere of the album and make everything else sort of subordinate to that." It's not like we're highlighting mistakes. It's not about that. It's just like the quality of the recording isn't as clear as we wanted. There's some noise issues and whatever. But hey, it's a home brewed feel recording anyway. So let's just play with that and make that part of the thing. And in some ways, it makes it more charming.
Oh yeah. Oh my God. There's been many times where I've recorded a demo on my phone of a song I'm working on or something I'm collaborating with others. And in that crappy cell phone recording, that's like your phone's just on the floor, you're just recording the room.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you capture this magic that afterwards I try to recreate in the studio and I just
You can't
can't
do it, right?
get it. It's
It
like
doesn't
you
happen.
can. You just had a moment, and
Yeah.
the imperfect nature of that moment was what brought the magic. And you can't even write that. You can't really recreate that stuff. And
Yeah.
that's what the raw recordings bring such a, one of my favorite electronic artists right now, Fred again, who's I think his old name was just Fred, and he was Ed Sheeran's producer, and a couple of he's done some amazing work. But then now he's kind of coming out and releasing a lot of amazing dance music. And one of his things that I love is that he takes voice note recordings or Zoom recordings and chops up these beautiful like his friends like pouring their heart out in a moment on a voice note or on a FaceTime or on a just like not a typical whatsoever musical setting to have these audio bits, and then he'll auto tune their voice to be melodic and like
Nice.
they're spilling their heart out in a melody that he's like reframed and worked with, but it sounds so good because their audio comes in and it's a crackly crappy cell phone recording and it's so charming.
Yeah.
It's like it really adds this beautiful essence, and I think that's maybe what you guys might be going for then, which I think is a great idea.
Sounds like it is. I mean, and that authenticity, there's so much that's imperfect in the world anyway. I mean, prior to about, I don't know, maybe the 2000s or so, mid 2000s, when everything got so perfect that if you weren't completely on the beat every single time, and I mean, we had click tracks and all that, but there is a beauty to the, well, you can hear, noise in the Beatles. You can hear buses honking outside, airplanes going over if you listen to it, with the right kind of equipment. Who knows if that's stuff that people actually know and anticipate and listen for.
They're subconscious though,
It's still in there, right? It's still
in there.
It helps you feel real about it. And, I don't want to spend this entire episode bagging on AI, but there's a lot of differences between humanity and technology that AI just isn't going to be able to capture. The randomness of being human is something AI will never know.
Yeah, mistakes, What
Yep.
about a mistake that leads to innovation, a mistake that leads to an epiphany you would never, ever, ever have gotten to if you were doing it the correct, quote unquote, correct way.
Right.
I mean, AI is great for a lot of things, and it's definitely not for others. It's like anything. It's what you apply it to.
Yeah, it's how you use it.
And
somebody was playing a thought game, and I saw the article recently that eventually, if we let AI run rampant, every piece of music created in the world from all of time will sound like Taylor Swift created it, right? Because AI is tilted towards what's popular. So it would naturally rewrite Bach and Beethoven and everything else to sound like Taylor Swift.
Well, yeah, it actually makes sense. And then that in of itself is the problem with AI in terms of creativity, right? There's no innovation then. There's no new pioneers that are trying something that might not work in the beginning.
Yeah.
But there's those bands or those artists that were kind of ahead of their time, and they didn't really get
Grateful Dead.
Yeah, exactly. And they did not get that popular in their time. Yeah. But then later on, you hear big bands that made it, and they reference those other bands as like their influence. Yeah. And so that's, again, like that can't happen through AI. AI is not going to do that. It's going to write my social media post beautifully.
Oh, yeah.
And I love it for that.
Yeah. It saves a lot of time because, everything you write is going to go out there, as clickbait, tuned to the lowest common denominator, blah, blah, blah.
Go for it, AI. Please help me out here. But when it comes to me writing music, I'm happy to take that off. Where I might bring AI in is for final editing, little mastering.
The last mastering bits.
Yep, little
normalizing tracks,
That's a great thing. That's, again, beautiful.
Or, hey, extracting vocals like the Beatles did on their last song, right?
Right.
Grab a vocal.
Yep. Sampling. There's a DJ software I use now where it can isolate vocals pretty well now. quick click of a button. You're like, wow, that was not easy to do so not so long ago.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's nice to have the creative tools. I want to be able to break them creatively, I guess is a good way of saying it, right? There are times where you hear something so amazing under the headphones that was a total mistake in your process. And you're like, whoa, how did I do that? Have you ever had that moment? It's like, that sounds so good. What were my settings? Where did that come from?
All the time.
And it's the same
Sometimes I
track,
can't.
you know,
Yeah, sometimes I can't recreate it, so I'll literally just put that crappy version in and just try
right?
to like spruce it up because I'm like, well, something great happened there.
Yeah, yeah. And you know, it's not correct. So AI would have ignored it, or at least maybe they would have flagged it. Say, hey, Chris, this sounds really bad, but I noticed that you like it a lot.
Oh
Then
yeah.
logic starts to talk back, right? Siri
that's
comes to logic.
that's the fun part too. Is like when coming circling back to when you're just bringing in music to play with your friends, right, and keeping it not so serious. You get into this place where ideas come so easily. And when I was with my buddy last night, he's a new friend of mine, and yet when we're hanging out, like a lot of great connections, you feel like you've known each other forever. And when we're playing together, I keep telling him, I'm like, I feel like I'm 16 years old in my high school band right now.
Yeah,
And I remember when I was that age, how excited I was to finally play with musicians, because I've been playing music since I was 6, but not with other people.
yeah,
And especially not in a rock band. Like I just wanted to rock out, and just
yep,
play some awesome tunes. And when I finally dragged my friends into, to my friend's basement, we got the band together finally. I remember just the elation and just the feeling of sharing that with other people, even if they didn't really want to be there. I didn't care. And now when I'm with my new kind of community and friends creating music, it's the weirdest feeling. I feel like I'm 16 again, but with new awareness and new appreciation and new gratitude and all the tools and experience to be like, okay, well, we can just leave this and have fun and leave it as that and not do anything with this stuff. And that's beautiful. And a couple of my friends, they're really gung-ho to just create and to put it out there. I'm like,
yeah.
great, you want to do that, then let's also do that. Like
Make it happen.
let's who cares, let's have fun
So
with it.
I have a kind of a this may be another episode. We want to get into some other point, and you and I've been talking offline about this kind of stuff anyway. But I've wondered sometimes about somehow offering the experience of creation live stream. Back in the day when I lived in Idlewild, California, which is a little mountain town. It's I don't know, it's a lot smaller than Whistler, but it's that same environment. For those of you Canadians, it's a great town. There are great artistic people there. There are great musical people there. There's a fine arts high school there for really amazing, talented kids that do all kinds of crazy stuff with music and video and fine art and composition and voice and whatever, dance. But one of the things that's cool about living in Idlewild is that there is a regular jazz jam session. It's normally 2 or 3 of the same musicians, but get this. So the 3 musicians that would be normally in this gig: Lee Ritenour's touring keyboard player, Barnaby Finch, who is also a recording artist of incredible scope and talent. Dr. Marshall Hawkins, who is a bass player that one of his original gigs was with Miles. He's got to be in his mid 80s now. And Paul Carman, who played tenor sax with Zappa. So these guys are like, at the top of their professional game. And they would just get together and they jam for 3 hours at a restaurant every Tuesday night. You can still hear this if you're anywhere near Idlewild. You want to check it out. It's at Faro every Tuesday night. But they would go with no net. And Chris, the things that would happen in that room were amazing. And it was about the music, yeah, but it was more about being able to sit in on this creative endeavor that happened. And I really miss that. Hey, it's fun to play in those things too, but I just really miss being in the room. So I'm thinking, gosh, if that could be streamed, right? If you could stream that Tuesday night thing successfully and it would sound that good, I'd sit there and watch just to be able to see it happen. So how can we make that kind of thing possible? We've got the technology, right? Does this work? Is
Well,
it satisfying?
Well, one way to find out is to try it. So, hey, everyone listening, you're witnessing this live here. We're creating an idea, but like this is where I always go. Like, well, why not try it and see where it could go? Because we have no idea of knowing until we try it, and that's
Yeah.
the experimentation. That's the whole point of creativity, right? It's just to try, just
Would
do
it be
it.
the same? I mean, sitting here under the headphones,
I don't think it's ever
watching
the
a tiny
same.
video.
I don't think it's the same, but or and it's just different. Maybe it's an interesting type of different. I don't know. Like it's more comforting. You're at your home. You're not at a place with other strangers. Although that's always fun, it's exciting. It's also sometimes not the vibe you want, right? And so this way, it might just be a cool way to experience something similar. But then you could be cuddled up in bed and with a like hot cocoa or something. I don't
Yeah,
know.
yeah. So, who do you know that's technologically savvy for miking streaming events? Video's easy. The video part, no problem.
and
But how do
like
you mic it effectively? And I'm asking this for a couple of reasons because the praise band that I'm in streams live, and it's really, 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 really tough to get a
hmm.
satisfying audio mix hitting the live stream.
I find for sometimes what I have encountered, there's kind of two ways to go about it. I sometimes you can do quite well with a room mic and just do one mic
Just
and
one
try to
mic.
record and just everyone mixes in that space so that you sound great in the space. And then one mic, probably those XY, room
Yeah,
mics,
yeah,
like a nice wide spread of the space. And then you plug that in. You can find some that are USB that go directly into your computer. Plug that into Zoom, and then that's your one and only audio source. It makes it more simple,
yeah.
and you can kind of mix live. So sometimes that works. I find that works well as well with more meditation events and where you're using sound bowls, like healing bowls and things like that, because those are
Well,
really hard to mic
the audio
individually.
range is narrower in a ambient sort of thing than it would be in a concert,
Yeah, it's
thing.
different. And then again, so it's and then the opposite side of that would be what I'm going to be doing today. Actually, I'm doing a online concert, well, online music meditation,
Yeah,
sound bath. But for that, I find for me, I have my mic, I've got my keyboard and sometimes some background sounds. So for me, that's way better to go through my audio interface. So you got
yeah.
a channel for each thing and you mix it that way. So for the listening audience, if anyone's interested in the live streaming, there's lots of ways to do it. Let us know if you guys have some other ideas. Please drop us a comment of other techniques of doing this, because the more we can learn and the more we can offer these things to the world, which is what we can do when we do it streaming, why not, right? But I think it's gotten better. Have you noticed
Oh,
that with
yeah.
streaming?
If you just turn, I mean, NPR is great, right? But if you start Tiny Desk at the beginning, you can see how the technology has evolved and how the sound has changed, and they are excellent. Who is the guy that engineers that stuff?
I
He's
can't remember.
famous. He's got like his own, independent thing. Not live streamed, but the sound is so good that it could be,
Okay. Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, it's nice because the more we can become better at this, like yeah, I teeter totter with the online thing still. It's not grabbing me still as much. If someone's like, "Hey, Chris, can you come like to this physical location and play a gig?" I'm like, "Yeah," I get much more
Yeah.
excited for that. And at the same time, I want to be able to be at a place where the online concerts and performances are, exciting as well and feel. I don't know, because I don't know about you, but like the difference when you're at a gig, I guess there's two sides. So when you go to a physical gig, there's way more work involved, right? You got to bring
Right.
all your gear, you got to do all this stuff, right? But then you also get the benefit of all the people in the room, the energy in the room. That energy, there's just no way to ever replicate that. The
Right.
in-person energy, you're never gonna have the same thing online. And when you're online, you can have infinitely more people attend. There's no overhead costs, and you never have to leave your house. So there's a completely different type of energy and type of situation with an online event. And in my mind, I'm like, well, yeah, maybe I could get better at making that more fun, I think, for the musicians and maybe a bit more easy. I think that's probably another side of it too. And
Yeah.
hopefully just not being the victim of technical glitches constantly.
How does that generally work? I mean, everybody's going to have their own bandwidth issues at the far end, but how about at your source end? Do you need big bandwidth to make it go, or?
I mean, if you plug in directly, if you plug in your, internet, your, what
Yeah,
is it?
remove Wi-Fi, go straight to whatever your, but
Yeah.
do you need like, I don't know, what typical speeds are out there anymore? I don't even know. I I tend to
I don't
pay
actually
for the
know.
highest speed I can get from my provider, but even that with podcasting, it still glitches.
It does. It does. Yeah, the live stream is it's challenging. I mean, the obviously you'll always sound better if it's a pre-recorded thing, right? And then
Sure, then
you
you can
live
play
stream
with
it
it. Yeah.
after, right? Because then you can edit it a bit. It's a challenging one. Maybe we'll have to come back, circle back to this in another episode because it's a good question. So, audience, let us know. What do you guys like to do for? Have you done any online events? Have you done any streaming? Or if you haven't, what have you seen others do
Yeah.
that is interesting, that it was engaging too? That's a big thing, is engagement. When you're at a concert physically, you can, let's go guys, get the clapping going. You run into
Yep.
the audience, get people, like I'll do that at some of my other friends' shows when I'm supporting him and he's on the mic, and I'll just run off stage and run into the audience and get
Yeah.
people going. And it's so fun and it's so interactive. How do you replicate that online? It's a little different, but I'm sure it's possible.
Is there any sense to having a streaming engineer in the room, monitoring the feed
Oh
and doing
yeah,
all of that?
for
So,
sure. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know anybody who does? I mean, I guess you kind of have to be present for that, right? At the
I don't
source.
know. I don't know. I don't know. That's out of my bandwidth, pun
I know,
intended.
me too. I'm just thinking, hey, if you're out there and you know audio engineering and you can engineer a live stream remotely, that would be amazing.
I want to circle back to a quick idea you're talking about, Bill, with how could we live stream the creative process? Like,
Right.
wouldn't
Yes.
wouldn't that be a cool thing for people to watch, like writing, actually writing a song? And of course, we would probably do it in a little more entertaining way, probably, and
Sure.
not too long dilly-dallying as sometimes you can do with the writing. So you make it still good for the audience, but also it's a process, and it will be a little messy, and they can see that. And that would be pretty fun, because my friend yesterday, he was, he hadn't done too much in music. Like, he was also in a high school band. They did actually pretty well for high school bands, so he got to experience a little bit of what the industry's like. But then after that, life, things, he working
Yeah.
in other industries,
Things
and
come up.
yeah, so he was watching me. It was our first time jamming together one on one last night, and he was watching me just kind of like come up with something. And I looked over and I had to remind myself, like, this is how I used to look at musicians when I was younger, and how the hell are you writing this thing right now? And
Yeah.
he was just kind of like enjoying seeing how I was just developing an idea, basically, and then kind of telling him, I'm like, oh, I'm hearing some harmonies here, I'm hearing dynamically, we should bring it down in the bridge, maybe some sparse piano, little vocals. And he would just love to see my composing process. And I'm sure that's the same for, I as I'm sure all of you watching and listening can relate. Whatever your skill and profession is, it's usually easy to forget that it takes that skill and talent to be able to do what you do, right? You kind of get
Yeah.
used to it, you forget. And so it was a nice reminder last night to be like, oh yeah, this is kind of a fun thing to watch the creative process. So I think that's a good idea, Bill. Like, how could we
Yeah.
how would
Open
that
that up.
work? Yeah.
There's
I think
yeah, it's Billie Eilish. Billie Eilish and Finnegan produced a video, and it's produced. It's kind of raw, but it is produced, about how they wrote the Barbie song. What was I made for? Is that the right title? And I watched a little bit of it, and they're just talking about it rather than showing how it all came down. Although there are clips along the way that show how it was done. But she makes the point that you just did, which was, well, a little while ago now, when she first recorded the vocal, it was like on her phone. And it was really, really hard to get back to that, right? To get back to that same feel. So something about even the technology in the room is helping to move the creative process these days, as well as the talent of the musicians, or lack of it in some cases. I have felt like such a bozo sometimes. It's like, well, what am I doing? I gotta make what noise?
honestly, the phones are great, I gotta say. I mean, as much as they are let's say there are things that we need to be careful about. Of course, the phones are so distracting and take a lot of our attention away. And the benefits, of course, and the positive sides of them are the creativity that you can do with a
Yeah.
phone,
With a
whether
simple
it's
phone.
video. Oh, it's amazing. Like even last night, just to generate some beats really quickly and not have to go on my laptop, I just pull out my phone, pull up a GarageBand, which is on the phone. It's a free app, everybody.
Yeah.
You pull up some drum loops. It's the easiest thing to do on your phone. And then you got a lot of parameters you can play with, though. You can do a lot with that just on your phone. And it's a great tool just to generate, again, like ideas, give yourself a little backing beat to jam to and kind of take the song forward. And like that's all on my phone. And what we were recording all of our demos with last night, our phone, right?
Yeah.
So
It's all you need. I mean,
all you
in many
need.
ways.
Yeah,
It's
it's
kind of
true.
nice to have a little DAW if you've got one, uh, but it's not essential. I mean, if you've got two or three instruments together, yeah, but for the most part, you can just pick up room sound,
Yeah.
go with it.
Yeah. There's no reason to not start creating today, folks.
Really, I know. Yeah, go out there, create things. Who's the guy? Neil Gaiman. Make good art, right?
Hmm.
Make good art. If
Just
there's
make it
nothing else that you take away from his graduation address, make good art.
Yeah. Yeah, just create. I mean, the joy that I'm a little almost hungover today, not because I was drinking or doing any substances, is because I was so pumped after my friend left. And
Yeah,
I forced myself to end the session at a reasonable hour. And even still, because I could feel, I'm like, I could go all night. I could
yeah,
go all night
right.
easily. And
Easily.
and 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 the next, like today, waking up, it's like it feels like you're at an amazing concert, or you know that feeling when you were at a great party or a great concert. You wake up the
Yeah,
day after and you're kind of like just in this nice
it's a
glow.
floaty place, you know.
Yeah, you're probably a little tired because it was like a bigger night, maybe, but you're physically tired in a really peaceful way, in a really nice way.
Yeah,
And that's how I feel today after a really beautiful creative session, like last night. And that feeling, I'm like, I want that every week. I want that more in my life. And it's not that challenging. Again, like,
yeah,
these are the things that we can do. It can cost you literally nothing
yep,
to do this.
yep.
So why not?
I am so down with that. Uh, if we are hooked on the dopamine charge from swiping left and right and whatever, that's nothing, people, compared to this one. And
Yeah.
creation is really not that hard. There's a discipline to getting your ego out of the room. But after that, it just happens. And I mean, if you've got a drum or a guitar, whatever, you've got something around the house, bang on your desk, start to make some rhythm happen on your desk, pull up some tracks, drum along with them on your desk. Don't hurt your
Yeah.
hands. But the whole process of just allowing yourself to be in that space is incredibly healing, incredibly healthful.
Yeah.
Forget about mindset. That's like holistic set,
Yeah.
you know, and
Yeah.
anyone can
Well,
do it.
hey, if you're in business or you're in a totally unrelated profession that's got nothing to do with the arts, playing and creating music as an exercise to open up new neural pathways to enhance your brain functionality, to enhance your right brain creativity for your job, for whatever your career is. I mean, that is actually going to be a massive value add to your life and your development for whatever your profession is. So that creative endeavor that might be the most fun thing you can imagine, believe it or not, is also going to be extremely practical, pragmatic, helpful in your material, regular old life that humans live, like making money and things like that. That will influence it,
Totally.
in a very positive way.
Yeah. We can't get away from it. I know AI is going to try to like take it all away, but here's the thing. So if AI now runs it all, everything, the whole world, it runs everything. What's left is the human stuff. And
Creativity.
we are human. We're social animals. AI is not going to rewire us, even if it makes us wear, VR goggles and whatever. We're
Yeah.
still human. Fundamentally, we need that same human uh, fuel,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and getting that through creation is one of the most amazing things that we can do.
Yeah, you're right. You're right back to how you were as a kid. My friend made a great point last night. He's like, as a child, we really are the most open to everything. And we're so innocent in that beautiful way of we have not
Yeah.
been conditioned yet by society to think all of the things that we now think as adults, and that are pretty much almost all limiting thoughts, right? Diminishing, making us smaller, insignificant, all these things. When you create in this way, you go right back to that childlike state and experience it as an adult, and experience it in a place where we have been quite programmed and conditioned. And when you feel that way, you feel that childlike creative bliss and euphoria, which it really is, you kind of, it wakes up a part of you that I think has been dormant, since we were children in a
Yeah.
lot of ways, right?
Yeah.
And it brings this beautiful part of our existence back that is the defining part of our humanity. I feel like is creativity, really. And the best part is the humor and the comedy I find that comes from creating. When you get a great idea and you get it out there and you finish, and you just got something epic, and you look at your partner, your collaborator, your friend, and you're just, both of you are just laughing your ass off, because you're like, wow, that was so awesome, and you're just
Right.
laughing. Or something was just ridiculous and did not work at all, and then you're laughing at that too, right?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
and and so there's this, and I found, at least in my creative writing sessions with my friends now, we're laughing 75% of the time. I mean, it's just like, it's a hoot.
Oh yeah. And there's so much out there. I mean, think about the fact that you can only hear a new song for the first time once. And I don't know if you're like me, I listen to a lot of music, and some of it I immediately don't like and I stop listening. On the other hand, I could probably be giving my imagination a boost if I made myself listen to it, regardless of whether I like it or not. Just put like aside, just like and dislike, put them on the table and just listen to something new. That probably does things to your brain that you can't do any other way, especially if you're not judgmental about it,
Mm. It's a really
Even if
good
it's
point.
crazy ass music that I mean, that you wouldn't normally listen to. That's a great practice to kind of open up my mind, or maybe it's just removing my filters. Because to get to childhood again, you got to remove some filters, right?
Yeah.
The inner child is there, but you got to take all the weight off that's holding him down.
Mm.
And listening to new music kind of helps me keep my mind uh, out of the game. Keep my pattern matcher out of the game. Well, it doesn't sound like anything I've heard before, so I'm not interested. Right.
Right.
Oh, well, maybe that's
It's
the very reason you should be listening to it is because it doesn't sound like anything you're in the same lane
totally,
with.
I totally agree. And I this is where I think technology is really great, because I've been wanting to shift that a bit with myself too over the years. And I'll thank DJing a lot for myself now. That's forced me to every week now have to consume new music, because that's my job now as a DJ.
Yeah.
And it's a great practice. What I'll sometimes do is, like, on the weekend, I'll have like maybe a couple of hours on a Saturday or a Sunday to just be a little lazy, and maybe read a book, or play some video games or something. And what I'll do sometimes, this is what I'll do, is very, very specific to me. So take what resonates, leave the rest, everyone. If Just think about how you can do this in your life in your own unique way. But what I'll do is I'll sit down, I'll play video games, I go into the game settings, I turn off the music, I keep the video game sound effects on, I turn off the music, then I put my speakers on and I blast my own stuff. But then I'll go into some of the new songs that I'm really enjoying. And on Spotify, again, technology being really helpful here, I'll go into the radio section of that particular song. And then that song style, there's going to create a whole algorithm and show me all these new songs that are similar to that, but not that.
Yeah.
And then I'm just going to listen to that playlist for the next hour or two. And then the second I hear something I do like, then I'll go and I'll like it, I'll add it to my new playlist for DJing. And then anything else I don't, and maybe I get one song that day, maybe I get 10 songs that day. But either way, that's the practice. And every time I'm like, okay, it's new music. And I sometimes hear things, I'm like, I don't even really like that like as a song per se, but there's something that they're doing in the song that I want to take and put into my music, even though I don't even really
Yes.
like the song,
Yes.
know?
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of it too, is that you don't know. Sometimes it's the things that you don't like that actually teach you something really profound.
Right. And hey, people, it doesn't hurt.
No.
You're not gonna...
and it doesn't really cost you much other than a subscription to Spotify, and you probably might be on a family plan and not even pay for it. So there you go.
Man, dude. So I got to wrap up with some good news. You
Great.
started by asking me how my week was going, and my week is going great. Well, it's it's been a week, but I got my spot. I got my my check from ASCAP this week.
Nice.
It
And for
comes
the
every year.
listeners that are not in the US, that's the American Song
American
Musicians
Society of
Union.
Composers and Producers,
Correct.
and it's a licensing organization, and they collect from wherever our music is played in the world. That's how Americans get their royalty check,
Mm.
right? BMI handles it, I think, in Europe. Or is
Yes,
it
or
you
England or the UK, I
or
think.
UK? I mean, there's organizations anyway.
Anyway.
So that made my it always makes me happy to get my $20 check
Go get a beer.
because it means that whatever times 0.001 people listened to what was going on, or maybe
Yeah.
it's times I don't know how much they
I
pay.
think
They
it's
pay you
point
pittance.
it's 0.0001 or 2 cents per play on
Yeah,
Spotify, Amazon, Apple. They're all the same. They're
it's
all
crazy. It's so little. I mean, if you multiply, I don't know what that comes out to be, but that's a lot of
not
people,
a lot.
you know, that
Yeah.
that I don't know who are listening to whatever I made years ago. And when I got my ego out of the way and finally started releasing that music, because I'm like, well, nobody's gonna want to listen to this stuff. I didn't even feel like it was that good of an album, right?
Classic perfectionist. I
And
can
yet
relate.
every year, this little tiny check comes, taps me on the shoulder, and says, "Thank you, Bill, for your contribution to the universe. Go have
Well,
a cup of coffee."
I think it's more just that it's a contribution, right? And the beautiful thing
Yeah,
about these platforms, as much as it sucks that they do not pay musicians at all whatsoever. Other than that,
yeah. Other than that,
they are really great for getting your music out to the world, though, because
yeah,
before things like Spotify, before streaming, it was physical CDs, and that's got to be physically shipped and physically purchased, and it's just not as accessible. And that
yeah,
side of it, I will always, as I was just saying, I mean, I benefit greatly from these streaming services myself. So I'm grateful for the technology. I just wish they could bump up the decimal.
yeah, yeah.
You
At least just a couple orders of magnitude, please.
Look, what about 1 cent per play?
Yeah.
I mean,
What about 1 cent? A
that's
penny
not
a
a
play.
lot.
That's not a lot.
But no, 0.001, I believe, and I could even be off. Like that could be another zero in there. I don't
Yeah,
know. It's disgustingly low
yeah,
because you got to be up at the level of like the Drakes, the Gagas, like the Biebers. You have to be releasing on that level to make a buck, to make it
yeah.
half decent, half decent.
And you
Right?
need like tens of millions of plays
Yeah,
to see an income of any kind.
any kind,
It's yeah, the model is not great, but the model can change as more and more of us get creative.
100%.
And you know what I see? Here's my vision for the future, Chris. The value of what musicians do is starting to come into focus.
It is.
And we're hearing it. I mean, the first part of that is like we don't get paid enough. Okay, but it's shifting. And as
It is.
people become aware of how important music is to them, that'll change the demand for it. We're always seeing that in ambient and healing music and sound healing, which has always been there as a genre, as a category. But there are so many people coming into it now because of the demand.
We should talk about this on another episode, Bill,
Yeah,
because
we will.
we will, because there's things that I'm hearing even more of, all these different therapies now that are getting certified in the psychedelics, right? And
Yes.
therapists in the States, especially in your country, is really paving the way actually in this, which is fantastic. Maybe other countries I'm not aware of. Let me know, guys. But what I'm saying is, there's therapies like for PTSD as an example, and I know there's a lot of great work being done with MDMA and PTSD. But what are they always fusing in with all of these plant medicine, or just
Always
straight up?
music.
It's always music.
Always
They've
music.
got the headphones on
Yep.
in the room with the therapist, but it's the headphones with the music.
Yep.
That is becoming more and more a very important part of this clinical therapeutic modality, and that's being recognized in Western medicine. So you're absolutely right, because now music is starting to finally get recognition outside of entertainment, because it is more than entertainment.
Yeah.
So much more than entertainment. And I know that's another
more than entertainment, more than medicine too.
Yes.
This is like it's like the spiritual journey. It's the invitation. And whether you climb on that train through creativity, or climb on it through psychedelics, or climb on it because you just want to listen to something else, you put on your headphones in the chair for 10 minutes. However you climb on the train, that's a new awareness.
Yeah.
Or perhaps it's an old awareness coming back to us. But
that's
it's
probably more accurate.
definitely necessary. and it's going to spark so much inspiration, creativity, uh, actual human generative stuff. AI is just going to focus on the, the pop music, but what's going on under the hood with real healing stuff, that's where this juice is going.
Absolutely.
And you're completely right about it. It's like, it's always been the neuroscientific way of examining the brain. So
Absolutely.
even though neuroscientists don't generally understand what's happening in music, it's all right. It's a great stimulus, and it can show us how much we need it, right?
Oh yeah, and there is still like good studies you can read. Like Your Brain on Music is a great
Oh
book,
yeah, go
right?
Daniel Levitin. Love that book.
Fantastic. I believe he's a fellow Canadian, and he did some great
Yeah,
work with Sting and some other artists, and just
all good
did.
things come out of Canada. Leonard Cohen, Joni Mitchell.
The only thing is that all like the awesome Canadians leave Canada.
Well, I wouldn't mind having a summer house up there.
Hey, you come out to BC anytime, my friend. You got
It's a little bit chilly though.
not where I live. No, I mean
other
think about
parts of it.
Seattle. That's the same weather
It's the
as
same as
Seattle.
Seattle.
Yeah. That's
But,
what
Edmonton.
Well, sure, okay. And my buddy who I was jamming with last night's originally from Edmonton, but okay, yeah, that's straight up brutal cold. I will fully admit that. But this is the irony of Canada. Like everyone's like, "Oh, it's freezing cold." I'm like, "Yeah, it is." Except nobody lives in those areas. Like I think it's like 80 to 85% of the Canadian population is within about a 3-hour drive to the U.S. border. Just so you guys know. So think about anywhere in the northern states, not Alaska, but like northern New York, Wisconsin, Washington. That's Canada.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's really no different.
Well, it's the part of Canada that matters.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, unless global warming really catches up with us and there's going to be surfing on the Hudson Bay.
Hey, great.
It could happen.
Well, we got lots of space. You guys just come up north if you need to.
Hey, I love it. Anytime. Seriously.
Awesome.
Seriously. I mean, we got a whole nother podcast on expats and musicians getting out of town because it's too expensive to live in the States. Anyway. Yes.
Yeah, you want to go south for that, then don't come to Canada because it's just
Let's land this plane. What are we going to leave people with today? Listen to music, people. How about that? There's my 2 cents.
No, you know what? I think it comes back for me to creativity. And I really encourage all of our amazing listeners and viewers to just play, have fun with the creativity, and see if there's anyone in your life, any connection, and you can reach out and create a new connection if you need to. Like if you build it, they will come, right? And
that's right.
If you don't have the people in your life to form a little band or form a little jam with, and you only really need one other person, but more is always great too. Try to start incorporating that into your life. If that is something that has always maybe, tickled your fancy as a kid and just never really took that time to go there, well, find a Sunday afternoon with your buddies and just grab a couple of instruments and have some fun. Start off with some covers, but then feel free to just don't even have to have a song written or write a song, but just play a chord and see what happens.
There you go. That's how to start creating. Play a chord, see what happens.
See what happens. All right, everyone. So thank you so much for tuning in, and I guess we'll catch you on the next episode of Discussions of Music, Healing, and Consciousness.
Said like a pro, my friend. Aho, everybody.
Much love, brother. Aho.
Much love.